Nice to be back. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I was at Excite Wrestling last week and then or the week before last. Then I was so sick last week and into this week. I didn't get to do one of these, which was such a bummer because there's so much happening in wrestling. I was doing our SmackDown review yesterday, and then news broke that Tanahashi is your new president of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and that's not even the most recent insane thing to happen with Japanese wrestling. WWE is apparently working with NJPW. Just goes so fast. Like, I can't even, 2 weeks ago feels like 8 years ago in wrestling. But very happy to be back doing this. I like having this little space. I like carving out this little alley that's my own. If you want to talk about anything specific, feel free to get in your chats at the pinned link. All the proceeds from those are going to NAMI this and into next month. Great organization. Sean donates all of his stuff to them, and darn it, I'm going to do the same. But thank you guys so much for joining me on this. I didn't get to really fully properly watch the past week in wrestling, so I'm gonna not go through like our usual format, but there's some things that I think are just pretty unanimously great that I did want to talk about. I try to avoid doing like news stuff because um news tidbits I think get pretty run into the ground, and some people are shitty about them for no reason and whatever. I try to keep it like on, hey, what I really liked this past week in wrestling. But this week's a little bit different. Not only because I didn't get to see it, but because there's just some off the beaten path news things that I want to dig into more. And some things that I'm really excited about that I think just ultimately are great. Like, I don't think I've seen a ton of negativity other than people that are searching for it, right? Um or searching to put it out there, I should say. Uh At 12:21 on 12/21, Mustafa Ali put out his trailer of him returning to wrestling. And on top of doing that, he immediately announced like 9 dates that he had lined up. And my God, what an incredible way to enter back into the fold. This is a guy I have been championing for a really long time. If you've been following my content, you know that. He's one of the most complete wrestlers that there is in wrestling. All he ever did in WWE what he was asked to do extremely well. And he never got rewarded for it. He asked for his release. They wouldn't release him. He reconciled with that. They got him a plan in NXT, and then they ended up releasing him anyway. When people point out Logan Paul and all the publicity he gets, one thing that I do is say, like, hey, there's a lot of people that are getting a lot of really great attention that are already wrestlers who aren't nearly as problematic, is such like a truncated term right now, but like haven't had as many issues as Logan Paul has created, who's right there and doing great things. And one thing that I would post is, look at Mustafa Ali, the superstar that you've had sitting there, not doing anything with them. And he's got like 5 and 6 million views on 2 of his 205 live matches. His Retribution return had millions of views on it. And I was like, well, why is Logan Paul, after losing one match or whatever, I think he was 1-1, getting a shot at Roman Reigns, and this guy's sitting at home? Now, I'm not an idiot. I understand the argument of like Logan Paul brings in people that aren't already watching the product, right? I get that. And there's a lot of upside. And as much as I will point out all of the shitty things he's done, because I think people need to be held accountable for their behavior, I still hope for the best of things, right? I hope that guy does change. I hope everybody that invested in his crypto scam gets paid. I hope all these things. My point with Mustafa Ali is, there's someone who's been working their ass off for years that is the most complete package that you could possibly have in a wrestler. And they had him on the shelf. And I don't understand why people were getting roster spots ahead of him. I'll never understand why in 7 years, this guy who was a cruiserweight classic alternate and got himself so over, got like just absolutely neutered by Brock Lesnar winning the Money Bank and the championship for absolutely no reason because Brock did not need it and ripping that moment away from that guy. And then he got injured and then Kofi Mania happened, which was amazing, and I'm so happy for Kofi. But they just didn't do anything. They didn't even fully do a story between Kofi and Mustafa that they had both hinted at and set up. The thing that's important about the return video to me is this. It was done with an idea that Mustafa had presented at least twice in WWE. And they did 2 vignettes of this thing, and then they kiboshed it. I don't know why. It's great. And he said, "Fine, I'm going to take this idea that I've been wanting to do for literally years, that nobody put any juice behind or faith into, and I'm going to do that in this really cool return to wrestling vignette. And he's going to go on a world tour and be the leader that we all need." The reason I brought up the Logan Paul thing and the Cruiserweight Classic thing having 6 million views is the feedback that I got on that was, "Oh, well, that's because it was on WWE's platform, and that's because it has been up for like 5 or 6 years." As if they're super heavily pushing 205 Live content out there. They're really just pumping it out, right? 2 million views on his account. 2 million views. It is 48 hours later. 48 hours and 22 minutes later. Okay? Uh the idea rules. Mustafa Ali rules. I can't wait to see where this takes him. I'm so excited for all the matches he lined up. I'm so excited to see if he pops up in the TNA X division. I'm so excited to see if he's a Super Junior in New Japan. I'm so excited to see if he's in AEW. I cannot wait for what this guy does next. And I don't have to because he told us what he's doing next. And it's like 10 indie appearances. One's in the UK. He's going to California. Like, this is awesome. This is awesome. And everybody is entitled to their own experience with things. I totally get people using, like, I know it got kind of whatever, like the prison metaphor or whatever. I know um there's been a lot of I have a chip on my shoulder promos, and some of them are great. And that's awesome. And everybody should speak to what their experience was. There's something really cool and refreshing about Mustafa Ali just doing this. Just like, this is the idea I wanted to do for years. Here are all the dates I'm doing. I'm taking over the world, and not even, I don't want to say not acknowledging it because I think that almost is an acknowledgement of it, but just acknowledging it in this very forward way of just like not looking back, not looking back. I'm thrilled for this guy. I'm so happy. This guy was so over as a babyface when he first had that like cool light up gear stuff. He was over. He was over in Retribution. Let's talk about that. People popped for that return when it was revealed that he was the leader of a stable that they had so much talent in and threw away. You're gonna tell me Mansoor, Shane Haste, Mace Brennan, whatever you want to call him now, Mustafa Ali, Dijak, Mercedes Martinez. You're gonna tell me that stable isn't awesome? That stable ruled. Yeah, chat's already talked about it. Gringo Loco versus Ali. Like, let's go. Um, I couldn't be more thrilled for the guy. And I was thinking about this a lot this week because I was sick on Monday. I was sick like all week. And I joined Mansoor and Masays, or Manny and Brennan, or I think Brennan's going by Mason now on the Indies. So Mansoor and Mason, we'll call them. I joined their stream on Monday, and they're very well balanced in the fact that they'll talk about their time in WWE, and they do it with an incredible amount of grace whenever they're talking about their release, and they are so overwhelmingly positive and thankful for their time there, but they do talk about the challenges that they faced, right? Um, I asked what was the thing that they missed the least. And I loved Mansoor's answer because he said, like, the just being parked part of it, basically. He was like, I was like, we forget the sacrifices that wrestlers make just for the possibility that they might be on TV that week. Like, they don't eat really that day because they'll look bloated and fat on television. They have to go tanning, they have to travel, they have to take care of all the responsibilities at home when you do travel. Sometimes they're traveling last minute. Sometimes they're told they're going to be on TV and get canceled. And Mansoor said, and inevitably, the time that like you do eat and you don't tan is when you actually are on TV, right? And think about doing that like week over week after week after week after week after week after week. And um he also said like I I would prefer that than just sitting home though. And what was interesting was Mason was like, nah, I preferred to have known what I was up against, basically, of like, I don't even want that sliver of hope. But Mansoor was like, see, I even enjoyed like making the futile efforts because I wanted to be working towards something. And he was like, for me, it's an even if there's a 0.0001% chance that that thing gets on television, he was like, at least I was doing something. Like, at least I was active. And I think it's important to realize like a lot of the people that either get released or get shelved, like they're trying their ass off and they're just in a world where it's blocked off sometimes. As many hours of wrestling television as there are and we cover and whatever, they're still working with TV minutes, you know? And I think there's it's a lot healthier in WWE now, it seems like, as far as the creative breathing room. But I always thought it was so tone deaf when people would just be like you saw it with Leo Rush all the time. I've been very vocal about this too. Like, oh, what's he gonna do? Retire again? Like, do you know how fucking hard this is? Yeah, I'd probably want to quit twice too, or whatever. Like, it's really fucking hard to be a pro wrestler, guys. Um, and especially in WWE, where, or I guess probably any TV wrestling, I'm sure this happens at AEW too, where like you establish yourself on the indies, you come in, they adapt your gimmick to television or they completely change it. And for a while there, it was great. And now we call you up from the main roster and you're just somebody else entirely. Like all of the years of investment that you had to get to what should be the high point of your career, but we're going to undercut all the work you did is a big mind fuck. Like that blows my mind. That blows my mind. And I love that in the current landscape right now, somebody as skilled as Mustafa Ali can drop a vignette. It gets 2 million views of an idea that he knew was funny. He's known it. He's presented it multiple times. He's gotten it to TV a couple of times and they didn't follow through on it. But that guy knew this was going to work and it's working so far and we haven't even gotten started. And I would argue this is almost the harder part. Watching that guy, it is. Because that guy's live promos are great. That guy's in ring is unreal. His in ring storytelling from bell to bell, I swear to God, like he will tell a complete story in as much time as he's allotted. And by the way, he was doing that with the same integrity and commitment the entire time he was in WWE, even when he wanted to be released and was rarely getting used. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to see what that guy has to offer. And I think he's going to blow people away. He already is. He already is. And it was also just really inspiring, right? Like, wrestler or not, when you see something like this guy who knew he had something, who believed in himself, who was trying to get something he believed in on the platform that he was supposed to be given, for him to go out there with all the like bet on yourself conversations, that guy said, I'm doing my idea, I'm doing it the way I want, I'm lining up bookings all over the world and I'm wasting literally no time doing it. That rules. That rules whether you're a wrestler or not. If that doesn't just like get you out of your skin excited, I don't know what you're doing watching wrestling then. Because for that guy, after 7 years of being underutilized and blocked off and making everything he was given work just to not be rewarded for it, for him to take control the way that he did, put out that vignette, have it received by 2 million people and counting, line up all these dates, probably be the most in demand free agent that there is right now. Maybe Dolph Ziggler, maybe. He said, I'm going on a damn world tour and everybody's going to give a shit about it. That rules. If that doesn't get you so excited to go do whatever you want to do or have been putting off or whatever, it made me jump out of bed. Seeing the way that guy just the second he had the opportunity to have a clean slate was like, I'm striking in the way that I want to do it. And I'm all in on this thing that I've been wanting to do. If that doesn't get you just up and excited, I don't know what does. I don't know what does. That's inspired shit right there. Whether you're a wrestler or not. That should make you want to light a fire under your own ass. And not because he didn't come out and say, I'm betting on myself. He didn't come out and say, after 7 years of adversity, nah. He just said, I'm doing what the fuck I want to do. That rules. That rules. That rules so hard. If you're a wrestling company and you don't try and get a piece of this guy, come on, man. I don't know what we're doing. This guy rules. There's a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of post-release glow-ups in different ways. Because there was a while where it felt like AEW was sucking up people that got released. And they should, because there's some world-class talent that got released. There were like 200 people that got released. You don't think like 30 of them are going to get signed to the second biggest competitor? Of course they are. Like, and it was a lot of, especially when you're going over to the next biggest one, right? Like you probably should be talking about like chip on my shoulder stuff. But I love what GYV is doing. I love what Mason and Mansoor are doing. Completely different. And I love what Mustafa Ali is doing. I love it. Like 3 completely different approaches and 3 just badass ways about going about it. And 3 people who I think are going to start to see the fruits of the labor that they were doing somewhere else pay off in a really, really big way. In a really, really big way. I'm wishing all the best for all those. I mean, everyone in 2024, but people who, man, like we're up against it like that. And that's scary. That's really vulnerable, right? Like I remember Mansoor saying that too. He was like, if that appearance at, I think they were at Deadlock. Yeah, Deadlock Pro. He was like, if that didn't go well, I think we would have just like packed it up because those guys were like trying, and then to strike again. It makes me so happy. And I think it's gonna be a world of possibilities for people who work like this. And I would love to see more independent wrestlers doing this. It kind of drives me crazy that they're not. Not saying everybody has like the budget that Mustafa does to put together a movie trailer to announce your world tour, but everybody's got a smartphone, right? Like Will Ospreay built a really, really, really fun feud with him and Gabe Kidd over Instagram shit talking and Twitter posts. Did the same thing with Speedball for Impact. Like he was cutting promos while he was working on his kitchen. I want to see more of that. I want to see more of that from the independent scene so badly. Because I'll tell you what, I'm talking to people who have independent scenes around the world right now for this feature that I'm working on. There's a lot of wrestlers in America taking some things for granted, and it's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I really, really hope that we see more stuff like that in 2024 from people who are on the independents, because the point of promos is to make you so emotionally invested you want to see someone beat the shit out of someone, right? Like that's that's the point of a promo. So, if you're an independent wrestler and you have the resources you do, I would hope you'd be taking advantage of them at least as much as people who don't have to do this. Because Will Ospreay doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to do anything for Gabe Kidd. He's already signed to he's signed to New Japan right now, and he's signed to AEW already. That guy doesn't have to go on to Instagram and shit talk with Gabe Kidd back and forth. It's just a matter of giving a shit. And you got to give a shit about every aspect of it, man. Um, it's like, and I know there's a lot of wrestlers who are probably like, is it really that hard? Yeah, it is. You have to give that much of a shit about everything. It's that hard. So in love with this. So happy for Mustafa Ali. So happy for Mansoor and Mason and GYV and these people that are just having this post release glow up because, again, whether you're a wrestler or not, like it is inspired to go that all in on yourself in as authentic and genuine of a way as you possibly can and do the thing that you love and have been wanting to do. That's it. That rules. That's so much that's such like a bigger thing than wrestling. That's awesome. I love it. Ah, really good stuff. Really, really good stuff. What else should we talk about? You want to talk about Tanahashi? My goodness, that surprised me. I was on air. I was doing the SmackDown post show yesterday, and um, we got news in the middle of it that Tanahashi was the president of New Japan Pro Wrestling now, moving forward. And what was funny about that was a lot of times in the chat, because people are idiots, they'll tell us fake news stories. Like they'll make shit up and see if they can like catch you off guard. And I was like, I'm not saying anything until our incredible moderator Luis verifies it because that was too like off the beaten path. And I didn't have like Sean doesn't tell me things, but I knew it wasn't on Fightful Select or anything like that. So I was just kind of stunned by it and what that meant and what the implications are and all these things. So I'm floored. I'm floored in a really good way. It sounds like a wildly positive news. Um, the statement that was released was really, really beautiful about what the changing of the guard could mean and how it's going to be a tremendous positive step, and that like this whole chapter was kind of about getting New Japan through COVID and recovering from that a little bit. And now the next step is going to be to try and get it back to a place where it's really, really, really flourishing. And Tanahashi has seen that. He kind of saw New Japan in one of its most golden ages. He was a big part of that. And I'm happy that he might be able to restore the feeling over there. But legitimately, like there's challenges in the Japanese economy and breaking the barrier into this market and all sorts of stuff. Like it is so hard to run a wrestling company, man. It's really, really hard to run a wrestling company. And then to run a company where you're international and a lot of your top talent is just going to end up signing somewhere else once they become your top talent. Um, it's a very, very tricky thing. I don't think American companies have figured it out. Like MLW, NWA, they don't know how to recover when people are exiting. It seems like in New Japan they're getting at least a heads up. Like Will Ospreay figured this out really early, right? And he was probably one of their biggest stars this year, if not the biggest star, probably the biggest star in the world, really, as far as like in a breaking out to a next level way. And we'll see what happens with Okada. There was part of me that was wondering, like, is this in response to Okada almost? Like, because the timing of it was so like that came last week, earlier this week, that Okada was entertaining other options. And then all of a sudden we have this changing of the guard with with his trios partner being in charge now. It's interesting. It's a really interesting and I think a healthy move Um, if you're following it, let me know in the chat like what changes you want to see. We talked a little bit about it on the SmackDown show, but my God, please clean up the belt lineages. That's like fundamental step number one. Fundamental step number one. Um, and I think it's important that belts all have different philosophies behind them a little bit and get used in different ways, but like them announcing that global championship when the intercontinental championship was right there after destroying the US title and then kind of destroying the UK title. Like, what are we doing? Like, I had viewed Osprey's whole reign as when he was like the US title is now the UK title. I was like, oh, and he's defending it all over the world. Obviously, what we're doing is we're merging these belts back into the IC title, right? Like, not what we did. So, looking to see that get cleaned up. Um, as much as I have loved this Zack Sabre Jr. title reign, and I think the TV title is really cool to have a 15-minute stipulation. They have not had the TV title on TV very much. And like you could have just done that. You could have just done that with the US title or one of the other 9 million titles you already had, especially considering how much he defended in the US. Um, Speedball, all the ROH defenses against like Metalik and Rocky and Blake Christian and AR Fox, like 5 of his 16 defenses I just named were right there, right? So um I think, and it's just the ugliest belt in the world. So not for me. Not for me, the aesthetic of that belt. Clean up the belts. Probably get back to a 2 block G1. I think would be another healthy move. Like let's tighten it up a little bit. Um it's just a little bit bloated. Like there's things that are very quick and fundamental changes that I think they can do that will help renew some interest and that I'm really excited to see how they expand because they do have this great working relationship with AEW. They do have penetration into the American market through New Japan Strong. Like there's a lot of possibilities with Japan and I'm excited to see where it goes. And most importantly, it seems like it's being well received by like New Japan itself. Like it seems like it's a very good and easy handoff. Yeah, Adam saying the 15-minute time limit stip is great in his opinion because of how long their main event style tends to be, but if they aren't going to feature it, don't bother with it. Yeah, that's a big part of it. And I also think it was cool because it forced Zack Sabre Jr., who's like one of the purest technical wrestlers ever, right? To maybe the most pure ever, to have this weird challenge of the way he ends and tells stories and matches because um with technical wrestling you're working over body parts for a lot of the match and a lot of the story revolves around that aspect of it. um and now all of a sudden you're putting a 15-minute cap on that. Like I feel like that forced Zack Sabre Jr. to explore his own wheelhouse in different ways, which I think is cool. Like the ending to his match with Speedball was so awesome. Him being the kind of champion that doesn't rely on that time limit draw to keep him the title, that he views that as a loss, is also an important like aspect to all of that, in my opinion. Jeff Cobb being the only one to last time limit is a super cool thing in that too. I think Zack Sabre Jr.'s best matches though are longer than 15 minutes. And I don't know if this was like an audition for a bigger heavyweight title. I certainly hope so. Because that guy deserves it. But it is interesting how that I think forced some creative places that he hasn't really had to go in his matches. Now that being said, as great as all of those title defenses, there's 16 of them first of all, and they were great. And I really, really, really loved his reign. And it's continuing. It's not like he's lost it. But his best matches to me were him and Danielson, which that's the highest form of cheating, right? But him and Osprey at Royal Quest 3 was fantastic. And it was almost a half hour. And I feel like the ceiling is just higher for him when he, I guess Osprey's kind of cheating at this point too. When you're talking about caliber of opponent, like it's probably Kenny, Osprey, and Danielson. But I think the best of Zack Sabre Jr.'s work doesn't necessarily have a time limit. So I'm looking very forward to what happens, but hopefully he moves up and on. We know that he's resigned there, right? He has no intentions of leaving anytime soon. So I think that's really cool. A Shock saying President Tanahashi versus Prime Minister of Tekkers ESJ. He's been very vocal about calling out other prime ministers. So I don't think he'll have a problem at Wrestle Kingdom facing somebody of authority, but also saying Tana does legit have a law degree. Yeah, I think that's probably something that's going to be really helpful. I think people maybe underestimate because love and energy with Tana. He's so great at the wrestler part of it that people maybe misunderstand or underestimate how involved he could be, like the how high the potential is for what he can do on the business side of it as well. So really good stuff. Wouldn't be a Cade stream without a random Zack Sabre Jr. rant, but when we're talking titles, I think realistically he's due up for something bigger. I'm really intrigued to see what happens with Bullet Club in 2024. I love what they've been doing with this old guard, new guard thing with Tana and Okada and Ishii. Ishii just having like a surprisingly incredible year. And I say surprisingly incredible not because of the caliber of talent that he is. We all knew that. But the matches have just been bonkers good. Like I mentioned Royal Quest 3 before, him and Shingo, I was like, I've seen it before and it's good, but it's not usually great. I that went on before the main event of ZSJ and Osprey, which I'd been looking forward to the second they announced it. And I like completely forgot that was coming up next because that was the best version of that match that they've ever done. And it was so much fun. And I just also like the old guard being used in that way. Like that was the first time that they paid off all the value that they've had in Okada and Tanahashi in that specific way. So we'll see. We'll see. I always thought like if anybody could do a mixed contract, it was going to be Will Ospreay. Okada being a split AEW New Japan guy, also very, very possible, I think. Very, very possible. So he's saying, did CSJ call Tana President Bullocks? If he didn't yet, he will. I'm sure we'll get there. Sure we'll get there by Wrestle Kingdom. Yeah, Adam saying Ishii had surprisingly good years every year, and I keep thinking that the following year is going to be the one where he slows down, and he just never does. He's incredible. He really. New Japan's so interesting because of the style and because of the mix of like when you think strong style and you put Ishii in that picture, like your mind goes to certain places and opponents and things, right? But he has this overwhelmingly calm air about him that I love when guys that hit like Mack trucks like he does have. Samoa Joe has it. That just like Stone Cold Assassin thing is the best. It's the absolute best. The best. You guys want to talk some Continental Classic? I didn't get to watch Rampage yesterday, so if there were things that had implications, I don't think there were. I think it was like a C2 free Rampage yesterday. But I'm loving the C2. I don't want it to ever end. I know it has to, but I don't want it to ever end. I talked a lot about how refreshed it is to have a blue league and a gold league with different paths and outcomes that like are so wildly different. So we're going to talk about the blue league in the second because it's just such an open field. But the gold side, I don't love the idea of it being a triple threat. I hate when round robins end in triple threats because I guess we go to that well every time. We saw it with the Heritage Cup. We saw it with the Cruiserweight Classic. That's just not for me, but I get why they did it, and Jay White deserves it, especially after what they did to him with MJF's title defense, right? Um, I really am looking forward to that match. I think Jay White eats the pinfall, and I think pretty much everyone's in the same camp that it's either it's Swerve's time because he is on fire, or if they have bigger, I don't want to say bigger things planned for Swerve because I don't know what this is. I don't know if this belt is going to be a collision based title. I don't know if it's going to be all three brands are unified into one or you're just defending all three. I don't know what that looks like. But assuming right now that the AEW world title is bigger simply because Continental has generally meant a lower card title. Like if Swerve is set for that and you go with John Moxley, the idea that Danielson or Eddie Kingston could be on the other side is very cool to me. We hinted at this relationship with Claudio and Moxley causing Eddie Kingston to have to disown Moxley as his best friend, and Eddie Kingston truly going it alone, and Eddie Kingston being most successful when he has gone it alone is the best shit ever. If I could choose, it would be Moxley and Eddie Kingston. And when you think about the exploding barbed wire death match, like how that was Eddie's face turn and the relationship that they had in those promos where they're talking about each other's having sat down with each other's moms and their whole history, like what a fun continuation of that this could be. And what a fun storytelling arc for Eddie to have beaten. I'm just assuming Danielson's going to the finals because I think that's a miscarriage of justice if Danielson doesn't go to the finals. Eddie would have had to have beaten Claudio again. He would have to beat Danielson and he would have to beat Mox in the finals to retain. So he would have to go through Blackpool Combat Club minus Wheeler Yuta on his own. That's a really, really, really cool tournament story in a tournament that has mostly been giving us incredible character arcs over stories that I think we're going to get. But like the character arc of Daniel Garcia, I think is so great. Like him losing. But coming so close every time, and this being a way that he's rediscovering who he is. Like him essentially losing out or almost losing out, we'll find out. Uh what a valuable way to have someone lose and what a valuable way to elevate other guys because someone's got to eat losses in these tournaments. Right? Um and on the other side of that, Mark Briscoe is over like Rover. And if that doesn't make your heart sing, I don't know what does, but I loved his justification of like, this is my rookie year as a singles competitor. Like my entire career, I've had my brother with me. And he had great showings and everybody's seeing it and everybody knows it. His match with Jay Lethal, I thought was really good. I thought they should have put ROH stakes on it based on their histories with ROH, but I loved it. Valuable losses in tournaments. I'm sold. But we are getting more character arcs than stories for now. They kind of hinted at LFI versus Blackpool Combat Club, which I liked because Roosh lost to Mox. Like I love when tournaments are maximized to the best of their ability. There is no more valuable storytelling device in pro wrestling, I swear to God. Take your battle royals and shove them up your butt. Tournaments that are utilized properly are the best because what it does is set up stories through wins and losses. It does not get more simple than that. It does not. I love tournaments. Okay, so I have Will Washington's tweet open because here's the thing. I don't do math ever, all right? But I really don't do tournament math. I make Alex Pulaski do tournament math and then I give my thoughts. And that has worked for me, but I don't have Alex on the stream. So thank God, retired Fightful legend and guy who works at AEW or whatever did a breakdown of all of the possibilities here. So I'm just going to read his tweet word for word and hope that it is still as timely as when he tweeted it. Um, Even more wild scenarios exist going into the Blue League on AEW Collision this week. Okay, so this should what happened yesterday on Rampage shouldn't affect this. If the already eliminated Daniel Garcia wins, his opponent, Brody King, is eliminated from the tournament. If Brody wins, he advances with only an Andrade loss. A draw would eliminate Brody. A draw would be a really interesting way to eliminate Brody, not only because you could set up something with Garcia and Brody King if you wanted to, but also because Daniel Garcia still wouldn't have won, but he would be putting that punctuation mark on the "but I'm getting closer" thing. Really, really fun possibilities there. Andrade advances on a win or a draw. An Eddie Kingston win would advance him only if Brody King and Claudio do not win, as he would hold the tiebreaker over Andrade. A draw would eliminate Eddie. So my heart will fall into a tiny ball of just like a million little pieces if that scenario happens. That's really cool. They haven't used any draws this tournament, so I'm intrigued to see if they bother. Bryan Danielson also advances with a win or a draw. A loss will eliminate him only if Andrade also wins, as Claudio and Andrade would have tiebreakers over Bryan. Claudio would advance with a win and Eddie loss, as Eddie holds the tiebreaker over Claudio. A draw would eliminate Claudio. My God. I am so excited for that Danielson Claudio stuff. I think Eddie and Danielson in the finals should be where you go, in my opinion, just because either side of that makes whatever happens on the other side of that extremely interesting from all three options. This is good shit, man. If Claudio wins, Eddie wins, and Brody wins, there would be a four-way tie for 9 points, but Bryan and Brody hold the tiebreakers, and only the two of them would advance to Orlando. All the possibilities could change with the outcome of literally every match. That is well done. That is a well planned, well done tournament. No notes. To have such an open season and everybody's wins and losses affecting each other on that side, and then have the gold side having been dominated by Moxley, pretty well dominated by Swerve, and Jay White plugging along, and kind of sneak it in there with that win over Mox. Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Tonight determines the fate of so many people in this. I'm so excited. I'm looking very forward to it tonight. I'm sure Alex Pulaski and I will be talking about it on Fightful Select. So I invite you to join us. This has been such a good shot in the arm for AEW, and I'm so excited to see everybody's character arcs coming out of it. I love the promos that we've been getting after too. I feel like you can always tell when Giancarlo is the one that films something, and that's a compliment to him. Because usually it's extremely high quality, and there's something about the way that he does his work that lets the sincerity of his subjects shine through in a really specific and genuine and authentic way. It's special. It's really special. I love this. Go check out Will Washington's tweet. Because I was not doing any of that math, but I love all of it. And there's so many possibilities for tonight. So looking very forward to it. I will close out here and just say thank you so much. And that I hope you have an incredible holiday season, a wonderful Christmas, whatever you're celebrating. I hope you enjoy it and it's as stress-free and wonderful as possible. If this is a hard time of year for you, or if you've had a hard 2023, just be so gentle to yourself and be so kind to yourself, and you're gonna get through it. And there's only a week left of this year, and you're gonna be just fine. Do whatever you have to do to make it the best you can on yourself outside of hurting someone else, which I'm sure is tempting at times. Isolate from your family if you need to. lean into other people if you need to. Be honest with where you're at. Be kind to yourself. Buy something small for yourself if you can. Um, if you're alone, jump into your community if you can. That always helps to be able to like connect with just service acts or whatever. Um, but I hope the best for you. I'm looking very forward to 2024. I appreciate you being on this very weird little journey with me. I never thought I'd be doing 420 wrestling podcasts in a year. Never thought I'd have my own channel. Very thankful that anybody gives a shit. Never mind the quality of people that follow me. The quantity is lovely too. But I really appreciate having good people to hang out and talk about wrestling with. So have a wonderful holiday. We'll see you tonight on Fightful Select if you're around to talk some Continental Classic. I thought last week's episode of Collision was about as perfect of an episode of wrestling television as you could get. So looking very forward to this one as well. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful holiday. We'll see you on the next one.